Hello everyone, welcome to the show. I'm your host Misty Doan and I am joined as always by the fabulous Liz.
Hello.
Behind the camera, shouting out any questions we might have along the way. I am so happy to be back with you this week. We have a really fun project and I think you're going to love it. It's kind of a 2-for-1, which I think everyone always likes, right?
Absolutely. And
yes.
It's so sweet.
Yes, it's really cute. So we're starting with this awesome candy corn runner. And as I was making this, I did a little bit of research into candy corn.
Like you do.
Like I do, you know, because I in another life probably would have been some sort of research scientist because I just like have to know all the things.
I buy that.
I dug into the history of candy corn and it was actually quite fascinating. It was invented back in the 1880s.
Wow.
It's been around a very long time, which in my opinion is shocking because it's not my favorite candy to eat, but I think it's adorable.
Well, hopefully not. The pieces aren't actually from 1880.
Right. They make it fresh every year. They do. So good point, Liz. But it actually used to be called chicken feed, of all things.
Okay.
Yeah. And so they were marketing because over 50% of the population were farmers at that time. And so they were marketing to that sort of farm life. So it was called chicken feed. I found that really
adorable.
Yeah, I thought so too. But anyway, there's a little bit of history for you.
Facts.
And so this is our cute little runner that we're going to make. But then you also get this adorable little pennant banner. So it's easy. You can make them both at the same time. And you just need, you know, your orange, yellow, and white fabric with a touch of black to make it pop. So let's get into how we're going to make this. To start off with, we're just going to make a strip set. And so I've gone ahead and cut down my strips of our 3 colors. And I decided I wanted my orange to be in the middle and my yellow at the top and my white at the bottom. And so these are different sizes. I opted not to use the same size of each strip because I wanted it to look like our traditional candy corn that you get, and it is definitely not even. And so this yellow strip measures 3.5 inches by the width of fabric. The orange is 4 inches by the width of fabric, and the white is 2.5. So depending on where you want your colors to go, just know this is the order I chose, and that's the size that we're going to need. So let's go ahead and start by opening these up, and we are just going to sew our long strips a 1/4 inch seam by laying those together. So let's take this to the machine, and we will get started.
And for anybody who missed those measurements, I'm just going to repeat them. So 3.5 inches is the yellow, 4 inches is the orange, and 2.5 inches is the white for what?
Exactly. And then we can just make sure that we readjust and have it lined up straight, and we can just zoom down this side with our 1/4 inch seam. Just take your time, make sure your fabric is staying where you want it. Here we go. Almost to the end there.
And as you're sewing this, Misty, we're seeing you like adjust it but not pulling on anything.
Exactly.
Right?
We just want to keep it lined up. We want those ends to be matched, but we don't want to tug because that'll cause a ripple in our strips, and we don't want that. We want everything to lay nice and flat. So you can see, I want to point out that even if you're using the same manufacturer's solids for all of your colors or prints, whatever you're choosing for your candy corn, I think it'd be really cute in prints as well.
It would.
Your strips are not necessarily going to be the same length when they're going with the fabric. And so don't try and make end-to-end match up.
Okay.
You don't need to worry about that because they vary slightly. And so just lay them straight, start straight at one end, and if they get off at the other end, don't worry about it. Don't try and make a match. I think that's an important tip because if you try to make them match, you are going to pull on it and you're going to get that wave and that rumpling that we don't want. And so then now that we've got that yellow on, before I even press it, there's plenty of room here. You can go ahead and add the white to the other side, and you do just the exact same 1/4 inch all the way down. I've gone ahead and sewn one already. So I have that done.
And that works because you have a 1/2 inch sticking out, but you're doing a 1/4
You're
inch
doing a
seam.
1/4 inch seam.
Okay.
So you can see here, I just laid it right on top, and then when I fold it back, I've got that little bit of gap, and so I don't ever have to worry about catching that yellow unless my seam gets a little wonky. So just make sure you're taking your time and you've got that nice straight 1/4 inch. And then let's go ahead and press this. And I actually took the time to make sure that my seams were kind of going towards the dark in the middle, just because I didn't want them to be peeking through. So I'm going to roll back, starting on this white side, and make my seam go towards the orange in the middle. And we're just going to work our way down. By doing this, when we get to the quilting process, we won't have to worry about that darker fabric color showing through on the white.
And that's why we have that whole joke about pressing to the dark side.
Pressing to the dark side,
All
that's
right.
exactly right. And then we're going to do the same thing with the yellow to the middle. Same idea here. And you can see it's really quick to just take the time and make them go the way you want. It's worth it in the end. There we go, just like that. All right, now let me move some of my things out of the way here. Now we've got a strip, and this strip set should measure, let me double check to tell you the right height, but it should finish right at 9 inches if you've got your 1/4 inch seams where you want them, which is perfect for our large simple wedge template. So I've got my template here, and this is so handy for this project because it is just naturally in that candy corn shape, which is what we want to get here. So I'm going to start by putting the wide side of my template on the yellow part of the fabric. And so I've got the wide side towards me, and I'm going to go ahead and make a cut. Now, can you guys see here, make sure you can see this little tip is hanging over the end just slightly, and that's okay. I just want to make sure that the skinny side is always the side that's hanging over my strip set. And so I'm just going to make sure my flat edge here is all lined up with that edge, and we're going to go ahead and trim off this first side. And then I'm going to pull this one down a little bit closer to me and turn it around to make it easier to work, so I'm not cutting towards myself. Again, keeping the top lined up straight with the fabric and letting the little bottom edge hang over just slightly. And the reason I'm not worrying about that is because that is still all going to be covered and caught in my 1/4 inch. By nicking off that sharp point, it's not going to matter one bit. And so now I've got my first candy corn cut, and we can just turn our template now and just make our way down the strip. And so again, we're making sure the wide side is flat now on the white side of our fabric, and we're going to just cut and cut and cut as we go down our strip set.
And this works great because candy corn's a little blunted, so it's not going to be super sharp point anyway.
Exactly. Exactly. And actually, I mean, when we sew it, it's pretty pointy. It really just doesn't affect it at all because of that 1/4 inch seam.
And as you're cutting, you're getting 2 different kinds of triangles.
We are getting 2 different cuts. So you can see, you know, because we're changing the direction of our template, we've got those with the yellow on top and those with the white on top. And they're both adorable. You could use them both in a runner if you wanted, but let me show you why I opted to split them in half. So if you see here, by the design of this runner, if I had my yellow at the top here, and then I put this one here, I felt like I was just getting big stripes of color.
Okay, yeah.
And so as I was designing it, I wasn't super happy with that. I wanted the color to kind of move back and forth like it did in this finished product. So I decided to go with just the yellow topped candy corn in the runner itself. And remember, you can make however many strip sets you want. Out of one strip set, you get this many, you get 5 of your yellow tops. And so let's just keep cutting this, and I'm just going to divide them into 2 separate piles. And we'll just cut all the way across.
And this is really cool because I think it's so easy to get all of these shapes done without having to do the extra because you've done the strip set.
Exactly.
And now you're just slicing and
Slicing
turning
back and forth.
slicing and turning.
Yeah, it makes it really, really fast. And, you know, just take time, make sure it's lined up, and just make your little stacks. And there's just, you know, no or very minimal waste by doing it this way. Just our little ends of our strips. Like
and this is going to sound silly, but some of the eagle-eyed will notice, like, Misty cuts differently from Jenny. That's because, Misty, you're right-handed.
I am. That's
Jenny's left-handed, so you might, if you're finding it difficult to do this and you're other-handed.
Start on the other side.
Just flip it around, right?
Yep, exactly. Okay. So there we've got that. And you guys can see just how quick this goes. We are almost done cutting our strip set. And then.
And here it totally didn't matter that those were even or not.
Nope.
Perfect.
Not at all. There we go. And so this is our waist, just these two little end pieces, so you can just set those aside. And we have our two different stacks, so you can see they're opposites. And so let's use our yellow on top to make the runner. So now we're going to use some black accent fabric. And what I've done is you're going to need 2 complete black wedges, just the same size, using your simple wedge template. So go ahead and cut those. And then you're going to cut some 2.5-inch strips. And let's show you how to do this. We're going to start by taking our wedge and our 2.5-inch strip, and I'm just going to sew it on this side. So I'm going to leave myself a little bit of extra at the top. I'm not going to start it right there, and we're just going to sew a 1/4 inch down this side, and then I'll show you how I trim it and keep adding to it.
Okay, so you've pointed your pointy part away from you,
Yep.
and you're adding a little extra black towards the top. Okay.
Yep, exactly. And I am using white thread here so that you guys can see what I'm doing, but this might be a great time to use your gray or to use the black because it will blend with your black background.
Gotcha.
There we go. So you can see just like so, we have sewn that on. And I'm not going to cut this off yet just because I like to have extra because we are working with an angle on this. But I am going to go ahead and roll this back and give it a nice press to get ready for trimming. And now we're going to set this over on our cutting mat. Move this so it doesn't try and pull me off the table.
Oh, gravity.
Exactly. Out to get you every time. All right, and so I'm just going to set this. I'm lining the bottom edge of my candy corn up with the markings on my mat so I have a nice straight line.
Okay.
And then let me grab a little straight edge ruler here, and we are going to cut this straight across. And that's going to give this nice angle to the black strip, but I didn't have to worry about measuring it and finding it before I sewed it on. So we're going to cut this side. And then on this one, I'm actually going to measure up a 1/4 inch from the point and do the same thing.
And are you using the ruler markings to help you with the white?
I am. So you can see here, I've got the tip of my candy corn here. I want to make sure I leave that 1/4 inch. So I've got my 1/4 inch mark right here at the tip, and I'm going a 1/4 inch up, and then I'm lining it up straight on these lines of the mat.
Perfect.
To again, make sure it's straight. Just use all those reference points you can to keep it as straight and neat as possible. And then we're just going to cut that off the top. And you can see now we've got this like extended triangle.
Neat. Okay.
It is. It works really great. It sounds trickier than it is. Once you do 1 or 2 of these, it goes really, really fast.
Yeah.
And you realize that it's forgiving and you don't have to worry about it. And so now we're just going to add our next piece of candy corn to our strip set. So we can just fold this over and line it up on the edge and sew down.
And you don't have anything hanging over at this
So
point?
I do a little bit.
Okay.
It just kind of peeks over
Just
at
a
the
teeny
top.
tiny bit. Okay.
And then this bottom edge will kind of peek over because remember we we blunted off that bottom edge. So we're gonna see a little bit of this bottom corner because of that.
Okay.
And then we can just sew down our 1/4 inch seam.
I love how you're making the angles totally doable. It's not hard, it just takes a minute.
It just takes a minute, and you can totally tackle this. There we go. And now we'll press this one. There you go. And you guys can see how nicely this is coming together. See how great that lines up? No trick at all. And then you're just going to continue doing the exact same thing, but this is one little thing I do want to point out. If you lay your strip on here and you think, oh, this is lined up, it's going to be perfect. Remember how I said give yourself a little extra room at the top? Because you'll notice if you line it up like this when you take it to the machine and fold it back,
sadness.
It is not going to be what you need it to be. So do not do that. I kind of had this mantra in my mind where I could see the side I sewed on last time, and because I'm using solids, I just flipped that over and put that on the other side.
Okay.
And in my brain, I was like, I want those stitches to be away, because then when you fold this back, it's going to give you the angle that you want.
Such a good tip.
So keep that in mind, and you're just going to continue until you get your 5 candy corn all the way across. It's very simple. We just repeat that step. Do you want me to sew one more just to show it?
Yeah, let's show one more.
Let's sew one more. So remember, we're going to put our side that we stitched on last away. So we're having it kind of go up and off of our candy corn. And we're just going to sew that 1/4 inch.
That is such a good tip.
Well, I had to learn the hard way, Liz.
Well, you learned so you don't have to.
So these are the things that I learned so you guys don't have to.
Exactly.
Right?
Exactly. I can't tell you how many times my brain has been like, oh, that angle looks perfect. And then, no.
It doesn't work. Yeah. All right. So then we'll press this one back.
It's a different kind of angle challenged. Oh, it looks so good.
It looks so good, doesn't it?
Yes.
And then we'll get over here, and just like we did before, we're going to line up our edges. And once you have that first one done, you can see how it will get much easier for you to do this because you've got a bigger piece that you're working with, and it feels less scary. And so we're just going to line that up there, nice and straight. Cut off that bottom edge. You can turn it this way if it makes it easier for you. And then we're going to cut this one off. And on this side, you again just want to kind of check your 1/4 inch back on this side, and then just make sure your cut is nice and straight.
Okay. So we can't quite, there you go.
Can you not see it? You need me to move up?
Just a little bit.
Okay, let's move it up just a hair. You bet, no problem. So let's just keep this one edge. I feel like this side is really straight, so I'm using that as my true edge.
Okay.
And then I can see here, I want to make sure I've got at least a 1/4 inch over. And so I'm going to take my 1/4 inch right here at the tip of this candy corn and just make sure that it lines up all the way down. And I've got a little bit of variation here where it got a little wonky, but I'm not worried about that because of that 1/4 inch seam. Okay. It will all be caught. So I'm just going to come back and trim off this end.
Tiny bit.
And there you go. You see how nice that looks.
Easy peasy.
And you just continue that on. So let's talk about these little end pieces here to make sure that we get a nice square finish. So I toyed with the idea of cutting one of these in half and using half of this for our end. Oops, if I can get my angle right. But I found that once I took my 1/4 inch seam, this just wasn't quite right. I wasn't completely happy with it. So I opted to just use a whole wedge, and we're going to trim this straight. So let's go ahead and lay this right sides together on this side. And then we will turn this and sew a 1/4 inch seam down. There we go. Again, press this back. And then let's lay this out. We always want to make sure we have room for our seam allowance. And so I'm going to actually measure over 1/4 inch from the bottom of my candy corn wedge here. And I'm just going to trim that off straight. And then now...
That's a little more than a half, but you wouldn't have wanted to try to measure that.
Exactly.
I gotcha.
Exactly. So you might as well just use the shape that you know is going to fit. Perfect. And so that's what I did there. So you can see how that ends up so nice. And then let me show you in this finished runner here. This is that center strip that we're building with our candy corn and our 2.5 inch strips and the black wedge on the end. I went ahead and put a 2.5 inch strip on the top and bottom of that center section. Then we have 1.25 inch inner border of white and another, I believe this is just 2.5. Yep, another 2.5 inch outer border of orange. And I just think this is such a cute little runner. Remember,
really is adorable.
This is from one strip set for your center candy corn. So if you make more, you can make this as long as you like. You could do 2 rows. I mean, there's just a lot of options.
That's so cute.
I think so too. It turned out so great. So now let's go back and talk about what we can do with those other pieces that we have.
This is only half your strip set.
This is only half of your strip set.
Okay.
So we've got these great white topped candy corns. And remember I showed you at the beginning, we can make this really cute little pennant. So let me show you what I did for this. I got some fusible featherweight. I've got this right here. And I went ahead and opened this up. And I'm going to cut out a few of our wedge shapes out of this just to show you. And this is the same thing. You can cut that 9-inch strip out of it and, you know, use your wedge to cut them exactly to match your strip sets.
Okay.
But I'm just gonna eyeball it for now and make a few cuts. Maybe I should start on
to show us.
Start on this end to be less wasteful. Make sure I'm nice and straight. And this is just a stabilizer because I wanted the fabric to have just a little bit of extra body as I was working with it. So I've got just cut out a couple there. Obviously you would want to cut out however many long you want to make your pennant.
Oh, that's right, because you've got 5 from the strip set, but you could make more strip sets.
Exactly. And one thing with the pennants, if you alternated, you know, the white top with the yellow top, it would be so cute, you know, to have those. You could use the whole strip set just to make the pennants. And it'd be a really fun decoration for Halloween. So with this fusible interfacing, remember there is a bumpy side and that's where the adhesive is. And so you want to make sure when you're placing these together to put the wrong side of your fabric towards the bumpy side of that interfacing. And so that's what I've done here. I also, for the first time, made that mistake when I was working on this project.
So what do you do if that happens and you get glue on your iron?
So one of the best tips I've been given is to just turn your iron off, let it cool completely, and you can often peel or scrape that adhesive off.
Okay.
Because we like panic and we want to like get to it right away, but you can get most of it off if you just let it cool. So that's a good question. That's my best advice. And so you can see I just, with a nice hot dry iron, that adhered really nicely to the back. Took no time at all. Let's do one more. Again, feel for those bumps, bumpy side down towards the wrong side. So you should be able to see your seams on that, and we're just gonna give that a press. You don't wanna slide this around too much because you are working with an adhesive. You just wanna lift and press your iron.
Okay.
There we go. And so we've got a couple of those with just some stabilizer. It just gives it a little bit more body than these. You can see how much floppier without the stabilizer behind it.
Okay.
And so I've gone ahead and cut out some more black wedges. Again, that same size using our large simple wedge. And we're going to put these right sides together. And we're going to sew down both sides, leaving this top open.
Okay.
So let's take this to the machine.
And are you going to sew right off the corner, or do you pivot?
I am. I'm going to sew right off the corner. I found it easier than trying to pivot. And we can turn it around and go down this side. There we go. Now our top is completely open here. You have a couple options. I finished this out and enclosed it in my strip, but I do think it would be really cute to maybe use rickrack or something to hang these pennants. And if you were gonna do that, I would recommend that you go ahead and sew in a little bit on your top as well. Still leaving a space to turn it, but it will give you more of a finished edge along the top. Like I said, I didn't think of that till after the fact, and I'm happy with this. And so what we're going to do is go ahead and cut off that sharp point so we have less bulk up there. And then I like to lay my ruler along this edge and just trim this down to closer to 1/8 of an inch seam at the point. Again, getting rid of some of that bulk. So we're just going to trim that out. You can do this with scissors if you want. I like to do this because I feel like I don't ever have to worry about sliding through my seam.
Gotcha.
So I think this works really well. And so we've just cut out some of that bulk, and now we can just push this through and turn it easily. And if you've got a pencil or a purple thing or anything to, go back and push that point out, I've got a chopstick here. Just take your time to kind of maneuver that out. And then that is that. And we can give this a nice press. Isn't that so cute? Just a nice press. And I did go ahead and then top stitch right along the edge of that to give it a nice finish. You can see here this little top stitched edge right around. And in that case, I did pivot at the point. And so, like I said, I just made a simple casing for this. So we just used a 2.5-inch strip. Let me remind you how to do that. Just figure out how long you need your strip to be. With just 5 and planning to pin this in place, I didn't need extra length here to tie it. I just went with one single strip for 5 of these.
One single width of fabric.
Exactly. Thank you, Liz.
Yeah.
And so just depending on how long you want this to be, or if you need extra on the end, you might want to make that 2 or 3 strips long. And so you would start by sewing your strips together, obviously, for however long you want. But in this case, we're just going to go with 1. And we're going to first start by pressing this in half lengthwise all the way down. Just like so. And if you had 2 or 3 strips, you would keep doing this for the full length of that.
Okay.
Similar to if you were making binding.
And if you're joining strips, does it matter if you straight edge join them or if you do the plus sign?
I don't think it matters at all for a project like this, especially because, like for me, I worry about that in my binding. I do the plus method because I hand finish my binding, and I think it looks prettier and it's the proper way. But if you're machine binding, you can get through that bulk easy regardless.
Gotcha.
But for this method, because we're sewing it all on machine, I don't worry about it at all.
Okay.
So in that case, I would probably just straight piece it because it's faster for my brain. And so then now that we've pressed that center line all the way in the length of this, we're going to go and turn each end of our fabric into the middle, and we're going to press it again. Just closing those raw edges into the center. I like to try and do this at the same time. If you have like I think it's called a bias maker, where you can fold those edges in, that's the perfect place to use something like that. I never think of those gadgets until I'm up here talking to you guys. So that's okay. But you can see, we're just going to press that in, and then when we fold it in half again, we have no raw edges at all. And so then we can just sandwich our pennants in there and top stitch right along that edge, which gives us this beautiful
And that finishes the
finish.
top edge. That's
Yeah,
brilliant.
Exactly. It encloses it so we didn't have to worry or fight with turning them. And you can wash this. It's super sturdy because every raw edge is enclosed.
That's
so
fantastic.
isn't that so fun? I hope you guys enjoyed this little 2-for-1 project of this really cute little runner. Let me show you one more time. Candy corn runner and pennant project to get you ready for all of your Halloween celebrations that are fast approaching. Thanks so much for joining us. As always, have a wonderful week, and I will see you next time.